As a big fan of sports manga as a whole, particularly enjoying basketball manga the most, I was surprised when this release slipped through my radar. Luckily, I ended up hearing about Deep 3, the newest basketball manga, to add to your collection. So today I'll be giving you guys my first impression on the first 2 volumes of the new release from Noir Caesar and Tokyopop. Deep 3 revolves around our protagonist Damien, who at the start of the manga is a freshman in high school. He is at the start of his basketball career at a higher level with the dreams of eventually reaching the NBO, the manga's version of the NBA. However, he has a long journey ahead of himself. Jumping right into the tail end of a basketball game, we get to see how amazing Damien is at basketball. Stealing the ball from his opponents and taking it all the way down for dunk after dunk, really just dominating the other team. He plays aggressively, attacking the rim on every possession. He has the build of a slasher if anyone follows basketball. Everyone in the crowd is in awe of his raw talent. That is until he is injured. Unfortunately, at the end of the game, he suffers an Achilles injury, and arguably more detrimental, he decides to stay on the court to take his free throws, missing both of them, guaranteeing the win for his opponents. We then flash forward to Damien's senior year, and his demeanor is completely changed. He is shy, timid, and lacks any confidence. See, he recovered physically from his Achilles injury, but mentally, he did not and arguably never will. He unfortunately gets diagnosed with the yips. It is a very real sports injury. It typically affects golfers, ending a few careers even. It's basically uncontrollable muscle spasms, typically occurring in the wrist, but it is unique case to case. Worst of all, there is no known cure for it. You kind of just have to live with it or adapt to it. And the bad news continues because for Damien, whenever he gets close to the rim, the yips hit, paralyzing his entire body. As a player whose strength was his driving ability, he became virtually useless on the court. However, with the season on the line, he uncovers his workaround for the yips, a deep 3. I don't know how else to describe it, but his yips basically have like an area of effect, so as long as he remains outside it, he can shoot normally. So not only is he trying to reach the NBO, but now he has to completely change his play style the year before entering college, and while hoping scouts will start to look out for him. And just a side note, as a real world basketball fan, the mangaka throws tons of references into the story. For example, Damien's quote unquote dad, Irvin Johnson, who's based off the late Kobe Bryant, even making a few nods to his first game in the NBA. Later in Volume 2, you also see Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving referenced as great shooters, which, if you are a fan, is cool to figure out who the player is supposed to be because they never use their real names. If you don't follow basketball, you don't have to worry if the references go over your head. It doesn't take away from the story. Everything is honestly well explained. And while I'm giving out compliments, another thing Deep 3 is spectacular at is drawing the ball movement. If you've read any other basketball manga, sometimes the art style makes it hard to understand what is precisely happening with the ball from panel to panel. In Deep 3, I feel like I know exactly what is happening with a little thought, which is impressive and I imagine rather hard to portray in a manga format, so credit where credit is due. In these first impressions, I always cover the first 2 volumes because I feel like it gives you more context to the overall story. With Deep 3, I feel Volume 2 develops so much from where Volume 1 leaves off. So if you're at all interested from the first impression of only Volume 1, I highly suggest clicking off of this video so you aren't spoiled by all that happens in Volume 2. However, if you need a little bit more of the story to be convinced to pick this one up, we're going to get right into it now, diving into Volume 2. Volume 2 wraps up Damien's high school career with an amazing back and forth game between Damien and Akeem. Akeem is a high schooler who is built like a tank with speed to match. On the surface, he seems like the typical standoff bully rival that is often seen in sports manga. Akeem is much more complicated than that. His own personal motivations, I wouldn't say made me a fan of him per se, but I'd love to see a return to him later in the story, when him and Damien have grown further in their basketball career. And I'm not going to give it away, but just the whole idea of the opposing team and kind of what they stand for and their morals and how they view the game that they're playing in the moment compared to how Damien's team sees it is also pretty interesting to see. Akeem is not even the only example in these first 2 volumes of characters I'd like to see in the future. I can think of at least 3 different players that I'm excited to see later in the story. Back to the plot, Damien is able to impress an American scout during his match and got invited to play in the United States at a Division I school. At this point, things start to really turn around for Damien. He's practicing with the best players in the country every day, access to state-of-the-art facilities, and perks like scoring tickets to the NBO playoff series currently underway. His dream of entering the NBO is finally looking more and more realistic. That is, until a week later when he is pulled into the coach's office and told that his scholarship has been withdrawn. With no way to pay for the high tuition, no other D1 schools showing interest, he is left with little options. The walls are really starting to close in on him, and he even has a really emotional moment with his mom, which was probably the highlight of Volume 2 for me, so I won't spoil it. However, he decides to put everything on the line and join a 2-year school, hoping to impress a Division I school with his performance. Unfortunately, and a major shock to me, Volume 2 ends with Damien not even making the team. These first 2 volumes got me so hooked. Although it's not groundbreaking for a main character to fall down before getting back up, Deep 3 seems to be pushing this idea to an extreme, and I am so here for it. I cannot wait to see how Damien claws back up the ranks with all the obstacles he already has in front of him. Damien isn't the type to just lay down and give up though, so I'm not counting him out yet. He's even found some unique ways to adapt and be able to play basketball even though he has the yips. I honestly bought this manga originally just so I could have another basketball manga to read. If you haven't picked up on it yet from the first impression so far, Deep 3 has so much more to bring to the table than just another basketball manga. In only the first 2 volumes, the story has already had some fantastic basketball games, each having at least one side character on the opposing team that could be their own main character in a different story. Typically, when the games are as good as they are here, it tends to lead the other aspects of the story to drop in quality. However, some of my favorite parts from these 2 volumes has nothing to do with basketball. As I mentioned before, the scene with his mom coming to visit him in the States, that scene and the backstory given was just written so good. I feel for me personally, it's always a good sign when a sports manga is able to do more than just the sports aspect well. All of my favorites in this genre are able to not only do the sports right, but also some combination of great character development, side characters that have substance to them, or a plot that keeps you on the edge of your seat volume to volume. And I'm not saying Deep 3 is excelling in all of these aspects, but for only the first 2 volumes, the mangaka has demonstrated they plan on telling Damien's story both on and off the court with the same amount of attention to detail. For that reason, I think anybody who already enjoys sports manga should give Deep 3 a try, especially if you're an NBA fan, because getting the subtle references they make to the real world players makes the read even more fun. However, if you're looking to jump into the sports genre and are looking to pick up your first sports manga, I would personally look elsewhere. My personal recommendations would be Slam Dunk, another basketball manga written by Takehiko Inoue, the same mangaka as Vagabond, running for 31 volumes, and if you want something a little bit shorter, a recent manga I read and enjoyed way more than I expected was Ping Pong by Taiyo Matsumoto, another one of my favorite mangaka, collected in just 2 omnibus. If any of you have also been checking this out as it comes out, how have you felt about what has been put out so far? Like I said, I wouldn't say it's the best start to a sports manga I've read, but I think it has potential to turn into an amazing story. So I will be sticking with it for the time being. It'll be interesting to hear if you guys feel the same as me or not. I have a feeling this one won't land for everyone, so I'm interested to see. Also, if you've been keeping up with the channel recently, you might have noticed I've been doing my best to do a first impressions video on any of the manga I'm picking up that have just recently come out, whether it's a reprint or a new ongoing manga. So if Deep 3 is not for you, I'm sure I'll be making a video in the future that'll catch your interest. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you can see the next first impression video to come out. And if there's any other types of videos you'd like to see me make, leave a comment letting me know. The next video should be a reading log on all of the manga I've read over the past 2 months. Until then though, I hope you guys are well, and I will see you in the next one, and make sure you're enjoying some manga in the meantime.